I never imagined my morning would kick off with a parking showdown. But the second I stepped outside, there it was, a glossy black luxury SUV parked smugly in my driveway, acting like it belonged there. For a moment, I just stood frozen, blinking, trying to wrap my head around what I was seeing. My driveway wasn't tiny, but it was undeniably my space. I scanned the area, wondering if a neighbor had an emergency and needed to borrow it temporarily. No such luck. No signs of distress. No apologetic figure rushing over to explain. Just the SUV, sitting there, immovable and indifferent. I took a deep breath, fighting the irritation simmering inside me. I had a packed day ahead, important errands to run, and now, instead of getting started, I was stuck dealing with someone who'd apparently decided my private property was their personal parking lot. I approached the vehicle, peering through the tinted windows, but it was empty. That was the first red flag. If the driver were inside, I could have tapped on the glass and demanded answers. But no, whoever owned this thing had parked it and walked off like they had every right to be here. Growing more annoyed, I looked around for any clue about whose car this might be. That's when I spotted her, a woman in a flashy leather jacket and oversized shades, strolling down the sidewalk like she was auditioning for a reality show. She wasn't in a hurry, wasn't glancing around nervously like someone caught in the act. Instead, she was yapping away on her phone, utterly unbothered, as if the universe bent to her whims. My stomach sank. I already knew I was dealing with that type. I strode toward her, raising my voice just enough to cut through her conversation. "Excuse me, is this your car?" I pointed at the black SUV hogging my driveway. She barely flicked her eyes my way, nudging her sunglasses down for a split second to give me a bored once-over before returning to her call. Yeah, I'll be there soon," she muttered to whoever was on the line, then finally turned to me. "Yes," she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. "What's the issue?" I inhaled slowly, trying to keep my cool. "The issue is that your car's in my driveway," I said evenly. "This is private property. You need to move it." She blinked at me like I'd just spouted gibberish, then let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, that." She waved a dismissive hand. "I'll only be 5 minutes. I had to pop into my friend's place real quick. It's not a big deal." I stared at her, waiting for her to realize how ridiculous that sounded, but she didn't. Instead, she flashed a patronizing smile, like I was some dimwit overreacting to nothing. 5 minutes, she repeated, as if that magically fixed everything. My irritation climbed another notch. "It is a big deal to me," I said, crossing my arms. "This is my driveway. You didn't ask, didn't leave a note. You can't just park wherever you want." She rolled her eyes, clearly unimpressed. "Oh, chill out," she sighed. "I'm not blocking you in. You can still get out, right?" That's when I knew she wasn't reasonable. A normal person would have apologized, maybe offered a half-baked excuse, and moved their car. But this woman? She acted like I was the problem. I clenched my jaw, giving her one last shot. "I'm asking you nicely to move your car," I said, my tone firm. "If you don't, I'll handle it my way." She raised an eyebrow, smirking like I'd just told a bad joke. "What are you going to do? Call the cops over a parked car?" "Please." She scoffed, shook her head, and strutted off, vanishing into a nearby house without a backward glance. I stood there, processing her gall. It was almost impressive, almost. I checked my watch. 5 minutes, she'd said. Fine, I'd be generous. I waited exactly 5 minutes, arms crossed, half expecting her to saunter out, pretending to rush. She didn't. 5 minutes stretched to 10, then 15, then 20. My patience was gone. She'd brushed me off, treated me like a doormat, and acted like rules didn't apply to her. If she thought she could get away with it, she had another thing coming. I glanced at my tractor, sitting there like a trusty old pal, and an idea clicked. If she wanted to treat my driveway like her personal lot, she'd face the fallout. I climbed onto the tractor, the engine rumbling to life. A few neighbors, who'd already witnessed our little spat, perked up, sensing something brewing. I took my time, gathering some old wooden crates and hefty rocks from around my property. Slowly, deliberately, I started stacking them around her SUV, boxing it in tight. I wasn't damaging her precious car, just making sure she couldn't drive off without a fight. The neighbors snickered, nodding in approval. One even hauled over a wheelbarrow of dirt to add to the barricade. By the time I finished, her SUV was trapped. Best part? I didn't have to move a thing. My property, my rules. If she wanted out, she'd have to ask me nicely. And I had a feeling that chat would go differently. I hopped off the tractor, dusted my hands, and leaned against my porch with a coffee, waiting. The neighbors stuck around too, eager for the show. It was only a matter of time before she'd see her predicament, and I was ready for the fireworks. The barricade wasn't fancy, but it did the job. My driveway was no longer a free-for-all, and I could picture her face when she saw it. I grinned, sipping my coffee as I leaned against the tractor. The neighborhood buzzed quietly, folks pretending to tend their yards while stealing glances at the scene. Old Mr. Jenkins from across the street rocked on his heels, chuckling. That's one way to settle it, he said with a nod. Bet she won't laugh this off. Another neighbor, Mrs. Carter, sipped tea on her porch, smirking. She's been parking like she owns the block for weeks. About time someone showed her. I wasn't big on public drama, but this had gotten under my skin. It wasn't just that she'd parked there. It was her smug certainty she'd get away with it, that dismissive wave, like I was a buzzing fly. She wouldn't learn without a push, and I was happy to deliver. Minutes ticked by, no sign of her. I glanced at my watch, 30 minutes past her 5-minute promise. She'd lied without a flinch, and it only made my stunt feel more justified. If she thought she could ignore boundaries and respect, she'd learn the hard way. Finally, the door to the house she'd entered swung open. Out she strutted. Let's call her Vanessa, still glued to her phone, giggling like nothing mattered. She didn't even glance at the driveway at first, her heels clicking as she sashayed along, shades perched high. Then she looked up. Her whole body locked up, her smug grin fading as she took in the sight. Her sleek SUV surrounded by crates, rocks, and dirt. She blinked, probably thinking it was a mirage, then stepped closer, head tilting as reality sank in. Her car was stuck, and for a moment, she just stood there, mouth flapping like a fish out of water. Slowly, she turned to me, her jaw tight. I said nothing, just raised an eyebrow and waited. The street went dead quiet, all eyes on her. What the hell is this? She screeched, her voice slicing through the morning calm. What did you do to my car? She stormed over, her fancy bag swinging as she jabbed a finger at me. Are you crazy? You can't just block someone's car like this. I shrugged. Figured since you weren't in a hurry, your car must like it here. Made sure it stayed comfy. I took a slow sip of coffee, watching her face flush red. You said 5 minutes, Vanessa. It's been over 30. She huffed, fist balling up. Move it. Now, she snapped, her tone pure venom. This is illegal. I'll call the cops. I tilted my head, feigning thought. Illegal? Funny, since you're the one trespassing. Your car's fine, just secure. I warned you, and you ignored me. She let out a wild laugh, hands flailing. This is insane. You can't do this. I have places to be. I crossed my arms, unfazed. And I had stuff to do, but your car was in my way. Funny how that works. She stomped her foot like a toddler mid-tantrum. I'm not playing your dumb game. Move this crap, or I swear. Just then, a tow truck rumbled up the street. Pure coincidence, but perfect timing. Her eyes widened in panic, thinking I'd called it. Oh my God. No, you wouldn't, she gasped, stepping back. I'll sue you. Before she could finish her meltdown, the truck pulled into the next driveway over. The driver hopped out to hook up Mrs. Carter's junker sedan. She'd scheduled a tow that morning. Vanessa exhaled, relieved, but her rage snapped back fast. You think this is funny? She barked. I smirked a little. She shrieked again, yanked out her phone, and dialed 911 right there, ranting about being held hostage and how I'd illegally trapped her car. I could hear the dispatcher's calm voice asking for details as she spun her tale of woe. When the cops rolled up, they sized up the scene and got it instantly. One officer, a lanky guy with a weary look, approached me. Sir, what's going on? I nodded at the driveway. She parked here without permission. I asked her to move it. She refused, so I made sure she couldn't ignore it. He turned to Vanessa, who was already tearing up for effect. He trapped my car. He can't do this, she whined. The officer sighed, pinching his nose. Ma'am, did you park on his property without asking? She faltered, sensing the tide turning. I was only going to be a few minutes. But you weren't. I cut in. The cop shot her a look. Ma'am, you're trespassing. He's within his rights to block you in. Now, You gonna ask him nicely to move it? Or should I write you up? Her jaw hit the floor. What? You're taking his side. I'm taking the law's side, he said flatly. With no options left, she spun to me, voice low and furious. Move it, I smirked. Say please. Her face twisted in rage, hands clenched so tight I thought she'd pop a vein. The silence stretched, everyone waiting. Finally, she choked out, fine. Please. I grinned. See? Not so tough. She growled but said the word, and I wasn't mean enough to drag it out. I took my time clearing the barricade with the tractor, shifting crates and rocks while she stood there, foot tapping like she was the one being patient. 10 minutes later, her car was free. She bolted for it, flung herself inside, and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Engine roaring, she reversed without looking, clipping the curb with a jolt. Neighbors stifled laughs as she yelped, corrected, and peeled out, tires squealing. The second she was gone, applause erupted. Best thing I've seen all year, Mr. Jenkins grinned. Mrs. Carter laughed. You nailed it. I'd have towed her, but this was way more fun. I shrugged, sipping my coffee. She needed a wake-up call. Doubt she'll park here again. A kid on a bike nearby piped up. Yo, I got that on video. Can I post it? I thought for a sec. Sure, just blur my face. He nodded, already editing. As folks drifted off, I exhaled, the tension fading. Vanessa had learned she couldn't steamroll everyone, at least not here. That night, my phone buzzed. The video had blown up online, racking up thousands of views. The title, Vanessa parked in his driveway, so he trapped her with a tractor, had me chuckling. Comments were gold. Petty level. God tier. She really thought she'd win this? I scrolled, amused, then saw Mrs. Carter's group chat post. A screenshot of Vanessa's all-caps rant about being humiliated by a bitter jerk. She was playing victim, threatening lawsuits. The internet roasted her. You parked there, genius. Take the L. I laughed, leaned back, and let it sink in. Vanessa thought she was untouchable, but she'd just learned a hard truth. Actions bite back. And I'd been happy to prove it. A week later, things had calmed down. The video still circulated, but the hype was fading. I'd stopped obsessively checking comments. People had their laugh and moved on. Or so I thought. One morning, Mrs. Carter strolled over, smirking, phone in hand. Check this out, she said, barely containing herself. It was another Vanessa post, whining about cyberbullying and emotional distress, claiming she'd sue me and the platforms hosting the video. She'd even launched a petition to remove it, 12 signatures so far. I handed the phone back, shaking my head. She can't let it go, can she? Mrs. Carter cackled. Nope. Keeps digging that hole. I chuckled. The internet wouldn't forget, no matter how loud she screamed. But she wasn't my headache anymore. A few days later, the cop from before swung by with a heads up. She filed a complaint, emotional distress, harassment, says you messed with her car, he said, smirking. Any chance it sticks? He laughed. Not a prayer. She trespassed, you reacted, no damage done. She's just loud. I nodded, relieved but not surprised. Vanessa was all bark. Later, the kid who posted the video messaged me. 5 million views now. Memes everywhere. People loved it, joking I should start a driveway justice series. I laughed it off, but liked that it resonated. At the hardware store, 2 guys recognized me. You the Vanessa video guy? One asked. Depends. Am I in trouble or getting a high five? They grinned. High five, man. Legendary. By week's end, Vanessa went quiet online, her tantrums fizzling out. One night, sipping coffee on my porch, I reflected. I hadn't meant to go viral. Just wanted to teach her a lesson. And I had. She'd humiliated herself worldwide because she couldn't follow basic rules. As the sun dipped low, I smiled. She wouldn't park here again. Some folks never learn, but sometimes, life, and a tractor, gives them the nudge they need.